I'm gonna do another fun one. On the weekends, I like to be more chill with my streams, usually than during the week, unless something pops up in pop culture. I think I'm going to throw something on. Mm, yeah, should I? Yeah, I think I'm going to throw something on here. Pardon me while I do so. Fit check. um, yeah, that's better. And let me see how we looking here. Yep, yep, yep. Change my chat filter. So, as I wait for folks to come into the chat room, this live stream is about spooky season. I've noticed this weekend that a lot of people are starting to get into the Halloween festivities, spooky season. Um, I don't know why it was this weekend that people started doing it as opposed to maybe earlier or later, but clearly people are getting into the feel of the fall. I guess because since the fall started on the 22nd, um, but what's going on to everyone in the chat room. So this live stream is going to be pretty chill. I'm just talking about spooky season as far as autumn horror movies and scary myths. So so that's what we're talking about. And for folks who don't know me, I'm just a contrarian. If you're not acquainted with my live streams, I stick to my discussions. I don't go off stray talking about random stuff that people bring up in the chat room unless they are putting in a super chat. If you want to donate a super chat or super thanks, then I'll gladly talk about anything you want to discuss. But if you're not talking about my topic, then you can kick bricks because I'm not going to pay attention to anyone who's not paying money. In any other live stream with any other streamer, they pretty much ignore the chat room unless someone contributes to their super chat. I'm actually nice enough that I talk to everyone in the chat room unless they're saying something irrelevant. So if you're saying something irrelevant, then I will ignore you. But again, what's up to everyone? Um, Again, my live stream is about spooky season, the autumn, horror movies, scary myths, all that sort of good stuff. um, and I will kick out trolls. And I do have a AI moderator to assist me when people step out of line as well. So, do do do. Uh, uh, uh. Do I like the Terrifier series movies? So I just started watching them last year, Harish. So I started off with the the movie that started the Terrifier the clown. Is that Terrifier is the name of the clown, right? Um, so I watched the movie. So there was a movie before the Terrifier franchise, this spun off Terrifier into his own horror film. And all of these are on Tubi for free, by the way, except for the newest one that came out last year, Terrifier 3. That's not on there yet. But 1 and 2 are on there, and the prequel film. I forgot what the name of the prequel film is, but in that is like a bunch of different um, things going on. Um, and in one of them, there's Terrifier the clown. But in the first movie, he's an actual person. He's just a psychotic serial killer, and he dies at the end. So in Terrifier 2, he comes he basically comes back as I don't know if I don't know if he comes back as a ghoul or he's demon possessed or whatever. But in part 2, he's no longer human. He's like a demon possessed spirit or whatever you want to call him. Yeah, I I don't really like them just because, like, for one, the gore is just over the top. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm being squeamish because of all of the all of the way he opens up people's heads, to put it in a nice way. The way he opens up people's heads when he unalives them is pretty graphic. And the characters, and again, outside of, you know, the outside of the scene, like the gory scenes, the the characters don't have too much depth to them. I mean, you can say it about any horror movie, I guess. Any sort of slasher movies, you can say a lot of the times the characters don't have much depth to them. But it's like the, when it comes to like the so-called final girl or whatever, like, you just don't. I don't know. It's just something. I get that the filmmaker's trying to keep it gritty, but I don't know. They're they're not my favorite slasher films. Put it that way. But I've watched them. I haven't seen Terrifier 3 yet. Once I should probably check to see if I can find it on some pirating site, because I'm definitely not going to pay to see it. YouTube has AI now. No, you have to. Um, it's an it's something you can that content creators can use for their YouTube content. Like stream, I use Streamlabs. A lot of other content creators also use Streamlabs too. YouTube does have some things that you can use, but they don't have like a built-in moderator for content creators to utilize. So that's why you have things like Streamlabs to use. So I've tweaked it so that it will remove certain things that people say or do. What's up, Carlton? Harris's Terrifier too. Yeah, I keep. I can't, like I said, I can't remember the prequel to the Terrifier series, but I watched that first. So I watched everything in chronological order. I watched that, then I watched Terrifier 1, then I watched Terrifier 2, and like I said, now I'll try to watch Terrifier 3 this year. I'll try to pirate it. Yar. Because I'm not paying for it. Carlton says, hit the like button, people. Thank you, Carlton. J.K. says, is this Bill Cosby? No, I'll be putting my pudding pop in your mouth, bitch. Anyway, Harris says it's a kind of slasher movie. Well, it's not kind of. It's definitely a slasher movie. He's just the newest. He's the newest slasher persona. He's the, in a long line of slashers dating back to, I guess, I don't know where you want to start it. I would say Texas Chainsaw Massacre, sort of, I think, the first of the slashers. Then you get Jason. Well, really, it was his mother, and she was the one killing people in the first two movies, I think. But in Freddy, Jason, those are the two biggest ones. Obviously, Freddy is Coke, Jason is Pepsi, which basically depends on whether you like Coke better or Pepsi better. But for me, Coke. So Freddy is the scariest of all the horror film slashers. Um, but then you got like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So Leatherface is sort of like I would say Leatherface is sort of like Dr Pepper. um, Chucky is in there. Chucky is what? Um, so Chucky is sort of like Seven Up. He doesn't really have the caffeine. He doesn't have the kick to it. He's sort of Seven Up. Um, who else is in there? Obviously Michael from Halloween. he's he, I would say he's Mountain Dew. So Michael from Halloween, he's Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is my favorite of all the sodas. So, but Coke is still the bigger of all of them. So, Terrifier. If I were to make him a, a beverage, a, a soft beverage, well, what would he be? He would be hmm, he would be Slice. Do you guys remember Slice? It was sort of like a sort of like a knockoff Seven Up. um, then don't forget all the other ones. We got like Pinhead from was it Hellraiser? Got Puppet Master out there. Um, what's the dude from Phantasm? Got him. Um, the Universal monsters are in a league of their own, so I'm not going to even try to assign them a soda. The Universal monsters are in a league of their own, right? The Universal monsters: Dracula, Frankenstein's monsters, of Wolfman, the Mummy, the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Which, by the way, that's the current horror movie I just started watching last night. The original Creature of the Black Lagoon. And I thought it was going to be like too slow and antiquated, but it's actually not bad. Some of these old black and white films, if you have an attention span that can last beyond 5 minutes, they're not that bad at all. Just looking through the comments. Harris says Terrifier's demon possessed. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. He was like a demon possessed. And I'm sad to say I don't remember how Terrifier 2 ended. I think he went back to hell or something like that, and now he has like this little sidekick, the girl. I don't know if she's supposed to be his girlfriend now or whatever she is. She constantly just defecates for no reason. It's just yeah. Streamlabs needs to stop this guy from spamming. Happy birthday to King J. You're not gonna spam my chat room, whoever that dude is. Harris says yes, brutal scenes, too much gore. Yeah, like I said, usually I'm not that squeamish, but the Terrifier scenes are a bit much, even for me. Like they are a bit much. That's why I didn't even ask my wife to watch it with me because I don't think she could sit through something that graphic. So I didn't even ask her to watch those with me. Um, awesome. Oh, and then I always try to put people on to like the overseas horror films because there are so many good ones coming out of like Southeast Asia. Like there are some horror movies, particularly in Indonesia. I think within all of East Asia, Indonesia probably has runs the gamut on horror films. And then I think second to Indonesia would be Japan. Not that Japan is second in quality, it's just that they don't put out as much horror content as they do in Indonesia. Like Indonesia has like a huge operation when it comes to Indo horrors, and Japan has like I said, Japan has a thriving horror film industry as well. But I think Indonesia might put out slightly more content when it comes to horror films, and you can catch a lot of that stuff on Netflix for folks who have a Netflix account. Who doesn't at this point? Most of this stuff hits Netflix, and a lot of it's pretty good. You know, like the doll and stuff like that. And there's a cultural connection between Thailand and Indonesia for folks who don't know. Both of them are the backbone of ASEAN, ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. They're sort of like the they're sort of like the EU of Southeast Asia, and they basically are collaborating in this political and economic association as a sort of as a sort of as a way to keep at bay the hegemony of China, which I don't want to get into too much here. But I noticed like with some of the horror films, so Thailand will put out like a horror film like PMOC, good film, check it out. And then Indonesia made their own version of PMOC for Indonesia based off of PMOC, which is based off of a uh, uh, Thai folklore, and they called it Kangmak. Um, so really good horror films out of overseas, particularly in Southeast Asia, coming out of Indonesia and Thailand and the Philippines. They have some as well, and Japan and South Korea. China, not so much. Um, China has a thriving film industry, but the quality of their films are really bad. Sorry to say, like back in the day when most of the films were coming out of Hong Kong, they had I think they had a thriving. I don't know. Someone if you live in China or have spent a significant amount of time in China, or you are just a film nerd, um, tell me if I'm mistaken on that. But it seems as if back in the day when Hong Kong was still independent of China before 1997, it seemed like they had a, a, a better film industry than that of mainland China today, which I think has taken over the film industry. Someone can fact check me on that because again, I'm not sure. But from what I can tell, the stuff that comes out of mainland China is usually of pretty low quality as compared to the stuff that came out of Hong Kong prior to 1997. Um, what's up, Black Mask Soul? Mm-mm-mm. Omar, it's kind of out of since I know you, I'll answer your question. But usually I want people to stick to the topic of my discussion, which for today I'm talking about like spooky season, Halloween, horror films, and scary myths, and anything dealing with the fall season. Do I believe Bitcoin is a good thing or a scam? Neither. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but I don't think it's a scam. I think it's just uh, I think it's just a very sophisticated multi-level marketing. I think it's just I think it's just a very sophisticated level of multi-level marketing, like or well, not multi-level marketing. I would say it's a very advanced pyramid scheme. Not, but I don't mean but I don't mean as far as an illegal pyramid scheme, because in an illegal pyramid scheme, there's actually no product or service. That's a scam. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency does provide an actual product or service, so it's not an illegal pyramid scheme, but the infrastructure of the business itself is a pyramid scheme because the worth of the coin is based on further buyers of the coin and yada yada yada. I think is the fact that it's I think it's a misnomer calling it cryptocurrency because no one is really using it as currency except on the dark web and on corn sites. Outside of that, no one is using it as currency. People are just investing in it and hoping that other people will come along and invest in it as well. That is a pyramid scheme. And that's not currency because if it's not being spent, it's not a form of currency. Like I said, the only place you see Bitcoin and other crypto being used as a form of currency is either in the dark web or in corn sites. That's pretty much it. People are instead treating it like an investment, and in doing such, I don't think is a necessarily a good thing, but it's not necessarily a scam either. Like obviously, I wouldn't object to someone if I got if someone if somehow I got my hand on a coin, an entire coin, or even two coins. I that's 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 fungible, right? That is fungible. So I would immediately cash it in because again, it goes up and down. Pause. But um, I wouldn't like it's too risky of an investment to keep long term because the crypto market is is not is not a good security to invest in. So I would be above the stars if I somehow got my hands on a coin or two or three. But because it is fungible, the immediate thing I would do is cash it in. So if you get your hands on Bitcoin, by all means, take advantage of it. But I wouldn't invest in it because all the coins are it. There's only a limited amount of Bitcoin, and they're all owned at this point. You can only so you're only buying fractions of these coins. I don't really see it being worth it unless you are already wealthy. I don't see the point in buying up Bitcoin. That's my take on it. But I don't necessarily think it. So that's my answer. I don't think is really a good thing. And if you want a better explanation of why it's dubious, you can consult um, a guy who's an expert in probability theory, um, investment, chaos theory, and risk management. Uh, his name is Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He is the famous author of the book called The Black Swan. Um, so he can explain much more effectively than I can why Bitcoin is a dubious investment. So that's my answer to that. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but I don't think it's a scam either. So anyway, getting back to the topic. Wait, why did Streamlabs? Uh, oh, because the caps. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, Prince Chen. I'm sorry, he got timed out. Um, definitely like and subscribe and click the like button. Um, but the caps is not, you know, Colin says the new Conjuring movie was pretty good. I haven't seen it. I mean, I saw the first movie and then I wasn't impressed. I think I saw two of the movies because the Conjuring is also connected to the doll thing, right? Not to be confused with the Indonesian version of the doll, which is a different movie franchise, which is I think actually better than the American doll franchise. But I wasn't really impressed by the Conjuring. Like for the most part, American horror movies don't impress me anymore. Like I don't. Yeah, I guess there's been a few that have been okay so far. Like what's the one with Sandra? What's her name? Sandra, whatever her name is, the little hot little snow bunny from the '90s. um, what's it called? The Bird Box or Bird Shot or whatever. I heard that was okay. Um, but for the most part, most American horror movies just don't do it for me anymore. I guess because I'm spoiled from watching foreign films. I'm American film, Hollywood just isn't impressive anymore. Like literally, they need superhero films to keep Hollywood going because most stuff they're doing just isn't exciting anymore. Harris is Freddy Krueger versus Jason. Um, you talking about the old movie that came out, Freddy versus Jason? I wasn't impressed. It was funny. Like that was a movie you would probably go see once in the movies as a good popcorn film. But beyond that, it was pretty cheesy. Like Freddy all of a sudden became like a kung fu master once he got pulled out of the dream world to fight Jason, and he's just throwing hands at Jason, and Jason's just won't go down. I It was like funny, but it was pretty whack. Like they might want to give that a sequel and get some better writers for it next time. Although I think Robert Englund has retired. So, as far as the original actor for Jason, because he's always, under his mask and in heavy makeup with a bodysuit on, um, you can get anyone to play Jason. That doesn't matter. Like, but with Freddy, it's like it almost has to be Robert Englund. Definitely don't want the guy from the remake, who is an okay actor, the guy who played in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. But if we're gonna do a Freddy versus Jason sequel, I needed to be Robert Englund to play Freddy. But they would need better writers because the first one that came out like what was it like 22 years ago? It was pretty whack. Omar says Freddy was actually based on teenagers that were unalived in their sleep in the 1980s. I'm not sure about that because um, it because remember when it came out in the early 80s. So the concept must have people don't realize how long it takes for films to go from concept to the screen. I'm pretty sure when it was written by I think what Clive Barker, I think he's the creator of Freddy. Um, that that was he probably created the Freddy character probably in the late '70s. So maybe it might have been inspired by something happening with a serial killer in the 1970s. But the first movie came out in 1982. The very first film, like 1981 to 1982. Someone can actually, I got my computer right here. Let me look that up. Wish I have voice command on this computer, but it's pretty old. Uh, when did it put out Nightmare Before Christmas? When Nightmare on Elm Street. There we go. I love predictive text, although I hate autocorrect. Not next. Oh, okay, no. So Nightmare, the first one came out in 1984. Uh, and let's look it up on Wikipedia, see if it says anything about it being bait. Because I've heard it. You hear stuff, when you're a kid. I remember my cousin tried to scare me a long time ago, and said, "Oh, Nightmare on Elm Street is real because if you die in your dreams, you die in real life." And that's, I know now, holding a psych degree and have my own nightmare experiences, that you definitely don't die in real life from dying in your dreams. So you actually seem patently immortal in your dreams. If that gives anyone any sort of comfort next time they have a nightmare. uh, yeah, so I was right that the film was inspired by several newspaper articles printed in the Los Angeles Times in the 1970s. So, like I said, it is a long it is a long journey from concept to script to film for movies, even small indie films. So that's why I was like, yeah, if this came out in the early 80s, then the concept of it must have dated back to the 70s. So I was right on that. And but it wasn't about but again, let me finish reading. So it says the film was inspired by several newspaper articles printed in the Los Angeles Times in the 1970s about Hmong refugees. So the Hmong, HMONG, are a set of people who are ethnically Chinese, but they live in parts of Southeast Asia. They have no particular homeland outside of their motherland, China, because they are basically, again, sort of nomadic. They're they're sort of like they're sort of like the Romani of East Asia, of Southeast Asia rather. They're sort of like they're sort of like the Romani of the Southeast Asia. If you're gonna ask who are the Roma or Romani, those are the people who used to be called gypsies, but that is a they consider that a pejorative term or a slur, so they prefer being called Roma or Romani because many of their a lot of their ancestry comes from people of Romania, so they refer to be referred to as the Roma or Romani people. Um, and they were often disliked within Europe the same way Jewish people were disliked. And as a matter of fact, during the during the Holocaust, just as there were millions, I believe 6 million Jews that were exterminated during the Holocaust, there were millions of Roma and Sinti people as well who were exterminated. The Sinti are a related group to the Romani people. So just as there was millions of Jews exterminated, there were millions of Roma, millions of Sinti people exterminated as well. Fact. Anyway, so the Romani refugees who, after fleeing to the United States because of war and genocide in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, suffered disturbing nightmares and refused to sleep. Some of the men died in their sleep soon after. Medical authorities called the phenomenon Asian death syndrome. The condition afflicted men between the ages of 19 and 57 and was believed to be Sutton explained death syndrome or Brugada syndrome, or both. And I'm sorry, I stated this was created by Clive Barker. That's a different writer. It's Wes Craven. So my apologies. Let me correct myself. I'm talking about Wes Craven, not Clive Barker. My apologies. So Wes Craven stated it was a series of articles in LA Times, three small articles about men from Southeast Asia who were from immigrant families and had died in the middle of nightmares. And the paper never correlated them, never said, hey, we've had another story like this. The 1970s pop song Dreamweaver by Gary Wright sealed the story for Craven, giving him not only an artistic setting to jump off from, but a synthesizer riff for the movie soundtrack. Dun, 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 dun. I can't get you guys know that little scary little riff that comes on when Nightmare on Elm Street starts, right? Very scary, very memorable. He said Craven has also stated that he drew some inspiration for the film from Eastern religions. It says other sources attribute the inspiration for the film to be a 1968 student film project made by Craven students at Clarkson University. The student film parodied contemporary horror films and was filmed along Elm Street in Potsdam, New York. The film's villain, Freddy Krueger, is drawn from Craven's early life. One night, a young Craven saw an elderly man walking on the side path outside the window of his home, and the man stopped to glance at a startled Craven and walked off. He said this served as the inspiration for Krueger. He said initially Fred Krueger was intended to be a chomo, but but Craven eventually characterized him as a child uh, murderer to avoid being accused of exploiting a spate of highly publicized um, molestation cases that occurred in California around the time of the film's production. Because if you guys remember the first film, he was very, you know, yeah. And you see that kind of changed with the sequels. But in the first movie, he was very, yeah, talking about Krueger. Uh, so on Freddy's nature, Craven states that in a sense, Freddy stands for the worst of parenthood and adulthood, the dirty old man, the nasty father, and the adult who wants children to die rather than help them prosper. He's the boogeyman and the worst fear of children, the adult that's out to get them. He's a very primal figure, sort of like Kronos, devouring his children. Kronos, for folks who don't know, was the Titan who devoured his kids because given he was told that one day his children would overthrow him, which they did, because in Greek mythology you can't change fate. Like the fates themselves stand in contrast to some of the other Olympian gods and their power. So anyway, enough of that. So that's the background to Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's not based. So it has some basis in reality for the inspiration for the film, but that's not. But it wasn't actually about. But it wasn't actually based on teenagers being unalived. That's not what happened. It was actually inspired by something way more sinister. um, which was a bunch of Hmong refugees who flee to the United States and died in their sleep of some sort of just you know some sort of weird disorder. And Freddy Krueger just represented an old creepy man. So, uh, Carden says Nightmare on Elm Street. Dream Warriors was my favorite out the franchise. I remember when when I saw it, it was cool. Like it was the beginning of the that trilogy. So you had Dream Warriors, the Dream Master, and the Dream Child. That was like the trilogy, which was what was that? Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and Nightmare on Elm Street 5. That was like a little trilogy. But the only one I liked of the three was Dream Master. I remember I saw Dream Master and the Dream Child in the movies. Then I also saw Freddy the Final Nightmare in the movies. Oh no. But I didn't see Freddy. There was Fred. So no, after the Dream Child, there was Fred. There was Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy's dead, and then in '94 or '95, that's when they made the last one, which was the Final Nightmare, which was supposed to be about him coming into the real world from the film into the real world, um, using the original actors Robert Englund and the final girl from the original from the first three movies. I forgot her name. She was pretty though. Um, but yeah, of all of them, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the Dream Master was my favorite one. Uh, Carlin says The Ring and The Grudge hadn't just shook back in the 2000s. I remember people jumped when the girl came out of the well. I think the original Japanese versions of both of those were better. Ringu and I forgot the Japanese name for The Grudge, but those were I think if you watch if you get the chance, watch the original Japanese versions. They're better than the Americanized versions. Chris Gregory says this is horror content. Yeah, so Chris, the, the title for the stream is Spooky Season, Autumn, Horror Movies, and Scary Myths. So that's what we're talking about today. um, Harris says Exorcism is a very scary movie. Yeah, actually, that is. I got to see that in the movies, not the original because I wasn't born then. Um, I don't think I forgot when I forgot it came out in the '70s, but I don't remember what year. I can look that up. Uh, when, I have a horrible keyboard, guys, so excuse my slow typing. Yeah, Exorcism came out originally in 1973, and it got re-released several times. I saw the re-release of it back in it was like I think 2002 or 2001, and even though by the time it, by that time it was almost 40 years old, um, or no, by that time it was about 30 years old. It was still pretty scary in the movies. Like they they had they had given a sort of like a digital they had given it a digital retouch. The sound quality was good, and I remember people were jumping, like so that that shows that the movie is still really good. If like you go to the movies to see a 30-year-old movie and people are still jumping and screaming because people were still jumping and screaming when we went to go see it back in like I said, I think 2002. or 2001. Big Tito says Bitcoin isn't a scam. People can use it as as one. Again, I didn't say it was a scam. What I said was that it's not useful as a currency because most people use Bitcoin as an investment, and as such, I think it is a misnomer calling it cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency, as any form of currency, whether digital or physical, is a means of monetary exchange. And if it's not being used as a form of monetary exchange for goods and services, then it's not actually currency. But that's not what makes it a scam. And I didn't say it was a scam. What I was saying is the process of buying and holding it and expecting further buyers to come in and do the same is a form of a pyramid scheme. Not all pyramid schemes are scams, obviously. Um, it's just that they're not a. What's the problem about any pyramid scheme, whether it's a illegal pyramid scheme or a legal pyramid scheme, is that neither type are sustainable, because it all draws on the fact that further people have to come into it to keep it afloat, and after a while that bottom will fall out. This is why people are very scared about the future of the social security system, because it is essentially a pyramid scheme. But that doesn't make it a scam. Being a pyramid scheme and being a scam are not the same things. So, and again, Bitcoin, yes, it can be used as currency, but most most banks and most credit card companies will not touch it because of its volatility, which makes it pretty useless as a form of currency. Like I said, pretty much the only places you are using cryptocurrency at this point in time is either on the dark web or on corn sites. That's it. And it's also used by people, by scammers who try to trick people into saying, "I've got all your information. I have your I have videotapes of you beating off on online because we hacked into your phone, and now we have all that. And unless you want us to release this to your family and friends, you're gonna pay us in Bitcoin of the amount such and such and such and such." That's the only time people use Bitcoin. Sorry, Bitcoin is a waste. And like I said, unless you are actually wealthy, buying Bitcoin is pointless, because first of all, there's a limited amount of coins out there for Bitcoin. All of them have been bought up. So you can only buy fractions of a coin, which isn't a very good investment in itself, on top of the fact that your investment relies on a pyramid scheme to build in value, and which will, again, that bottom will eventually fall out. Um, and usually the biggest thing people can save in in defense of Bitcoin or other types of cryptocurrency is of the new types of way that it can store information, which is great. It's just a To me, it's just a glorified pseudo random generator, pseudo number random generator. So, but that's good. But that technology, the new technology that comes along with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency, can be used divorced from Bitcoin itself. So people just like to use a lot of digital digital talk to try to sell people on it. Stupid people who don't know anything better and don't are math illiterate. But again, it would be worthwhile to have Bitcoin if you are wealthy. Otherwise, it's a waste. You're better off just buying stock, mutual funds, or real estate. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore because that's not the topic for today's discussion. Anyway, yes, I'm not going to. You guys can read the rest of what he said if you want. I'm not going to waste my time. Carlton says at Omar, some countries are using Bitcoin as currency, and major institutions like BlackRock are buying it. Do your research. Sandra Bullock, yes, that's her name. She was a cutie back in the day. Carlton says these trolls are crazy in the chat. I don't pay any attention. Again, Carlton, when you get down to it, most of these trolls are either kids or they're like pretty much low IQ, neurodivergent people. The closer you get to midnight, the more neurodivergent trolls come out. And most trolls are neurodivergent because they don't understand. Most of them, when you get into these people who have autism, and I'm talking about the low functioning autistic people, because high functioning autistic people will have better things to do with their life than troll content creators. There's mostly these low functioning autistic people who usually have a, who usually have a comorbidity of ADHD or low IQ, and they don't know that the stuff that they say is completely inappropriate, or they don't care. It's a mixture of not understanding the depth of their stupidity and not caring about the consequences. And these are most of these trolls. Like I said, they're either children or they're neurodivergent, and so they're just too dumb to know any better to put a check on what they say. So I just ignore them because unless they drop in a super chat, they're not worth responding to anymore. It's funny roasting them every once in a while, but literally they're too stupid to even get it. Like us normal people, neurotypical people, will laugh at when I'm roasting them, but they don't even get it because they're too stupid. Carlin says it's not a movie, but Resident Evil 2, the video game on the PS1 was scary. I I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah, well, I know I never definitely played the original the original Resident Evil games, but I remember seeing them at least. I'll say that. Get some water. Sorry. Poltergeist, yeah, that's another really good one. That one scares me. The remake, don't bother with the remake. I saw the remake. It doesn't. The remake isn't a bad movie, but it just doesn't have the. It doesn't have that certain. Um, that's that feel to it that makes the original one creepy. The original one just has that creep factor that the remake doesn't have. Sort of the same thing with the Nightmare on it. Like none of all those 2000 remakes of classic horror films, they all failed. There was the remake of there was the remake of Halloween by Rob Zombie, that was trash. There was the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, that was trash. Um, the remake of Poltergeist, not trash, but just wasn't good. Um, I think there was another remake as well, but I think there was a remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and of Evil Dead. Not good, but yeah. Um, Poltergeist was scary. The clown, that scared me for so long when I saw that. The clown or the tree branch reached. That stuff was scary. Poltergeist 2 was scary as well, but it wasn't scary like the original one. What creeped me out about Poltergeist 2 was the old man. God is in his holy temple. Quaker Oats man. that's like a, that's how you can describe him. He looks like he was like he was like an evil version of the Quaker Oats man. But yeah, Poltergeist is a classic, definitely. They got the remake on Tubi, so I'm not gonna watch it because I saw it like what 12 years. I think I watched it about 10, 11 years ago. I'm like, this wasn't good. But in any case, like I said, I'm a huge advocate, guys, for like checking out some of these foreign films, not just horror films, but foreign films in general. Like you can get tired of the everything Hollywood produces, and like I said, I think the only thing that's been keeping Hollywood afloat for the past 15 years has been the superhero film genre, and now that's dying, not because of superhero film fatigue, as people have been trying to say. People are getting tired of mediocre films, and because so many films are in the superhero film genre, a lot of these filmmakers got comfortable making mediocre films. Just I can barely call them films. Some of them are just pushing out content under the superhero film genre. It's just content. They're just producing content, and it tired people out. Like you can't just take someone's favorite superhero and put them in a trap in a trash movie and think people are going to pay for it. Yeah, some people will, but that's not going to endear them to that film. That's not going to get people to come to the come to the theater when they can just wait a few months and stream it. On top, and not only are they tired of not only were they tired of mediocre films, but they were just getting tired of franchises as well. Like it became homework for the MCU to watch films. Like I remember when I think Thunderbolts came out, like they told you all the different films you gotta watch to know what's going to happen in Thunderbolts. Like you had to watch Ant Man. You had to have watched Ant Man and the Wasp. You had to have watched Black Widow. You had to watch Captain America 1, 2, and 3. You would have to watch you know Avengers Endgame, and it was like it's like at this point it's no longer enjoyable once you have to do homework to watch a film, which is why I think Fantastic Four did well because you didn't have to watch anything prior to see that film and enjoy it. Same thing with the new Superman movie. You didn't have to watch anything prior to enjoy that film. So anyway, what's up, Eric? He says I watched Evil Dead 2 and Ash versus the Army of Darkness for the first time this weekend. I can't believe those slipped by me growing up. They were goofy but good. I saw Evil Dead 2 as a teenager because my girlfriend, well, my very first girlfriend, um she she wanted to watch it. So I was like, all right, cool. Like it was funny, like I was living in Baltimore, she was still living in Philly. I used to live in Philly. And so I was every other, every month I would like sneak up to Philly for the whole day and spend time with her. Her mom knew and was cool with it. Like her mom liked me, and like my parents didn't know. Like they thought I was just hanging out with my homeboys. And so I told, and of course I told my homeboy I'm gonna go see my girl. So I was like, cover for me if they ask where I am. He was like, they was like, all right, I got you. So go up there, and I remember a few times we would rent videos, and I remember we watched Evil Dead 2, and it was kind of goofy, but I liked it. I think I think it was Evil Dead 2 and yeah, Ash versus the Army of Darkness or whatever. They were like goofy but good at the same time. And that was it was of course those are good cuz they were made by Sam Raimi. He was the same one who did the original Spider-Man films back in the 2000s. Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3. By the way, AMC is re-releasing the Spider-Man trilogy. I don't remember what the dates are if you want to check that out, but it's gonna be so they're gonna release Spider-Man, then Spider-Man 2.1. 2.1 was different because it had extra content that the original Spider-Man 2 didn't have in it. So they're gonna release Spider-Man 2.1 and Spider-Man 3. I know a lot of people hate on Spider-Man 3, but liked I actually liked it except for the third act. Most most of Spider-Man 3 was good except for the third act. Plus I liked how he went emo. Like to me it was funny. Like that was just pure Sam Raimi at that point. And you can see like some of the horror elements in part 3 that Sam Raimi is known for. He's also the one who made Doctor Strange um Multiverse of Madness. That was definitely all Sam Raimi there. But yeah, those were like some campy horror films that were, enjoyable. I don't know if I will watch them today, but when I watched them back in the day, they were all right. And I did watch the most, I think one of the most recent ones to the Evil Dead franchise. I watched that like 2 years ago or a year ago, whenever. Carlin says Paranormal Activity was good and its marketing was even better. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, because I think when Paranormal Activity came out, they were trying to, well, with the marketing, they were connecting it to like actual like alleged paranormal phenomena or whatever. Which guys, check out my live streams in the past. Last year, I did all about paranormal and other sort of stuff, they're called, and other sort of like extra scientific and paranormal stuff. Um, cheap plug, but anyway, yeah. It, I'm trying. I think I saw Paranormal Activity. I can't remember just because if I did watch it, I didn't like it that much. Although I don't think I saw it to be. I'm trying to remember. Mm, yeah, I think I did see it, but I can't remember. But if I did see it, that just means that it wasn't that good if I don't remember too much about it. Eric says I tend to gravitate towards horror comics during October. There are a lot of great horror books, new and old. Which reminds me, so MCU did a Marvel Zombies series, which is a spinoff off of its What If, and it's horrible. It is a girl boss thing through and through. They made Kamala Khan like the star of the Marvel Zombies thing. I don't know why. Um, don't recommend it. Don't watch it. But the Marvel Zombies, the comic books themselves that came out what 20 years ago were great. No, I think it was older than that. I think they came out in the '90s, the Marvel Zombies, and then they did a sequel to the Marvel Zombies in the 2000s. And because of the success of both of those, then DC did its own version of DC Zombies about 10 years ago. I don't remember how good that was though, the DC Zombies, but I know the original Marvel Zombies is like really uh I know really well liked within the comic book fan base. And it makes sense because Marvel started off back in the day making a lot of great horror comics. They were they were separate from their superhero comics. They had a whole genre of Marvel of horror stuff. And even before they became Marvel, back when it was originally Timely Comics, back in the 30s and 40s, they had started making they had a whole bunch of horror comics from the past. So if people want to check out the golden age of comics era for Marvel, back when the imprint was still Timely Comics, they had a whole bunch of horror stuff. They actually only got into the superhero stuff because they wanted to compete with national periodicals, which became DC Comics, right? Because of the success of Superman and Batman, they they in Marvel number one, they I think it was Marvel number one. Yeah, Marvel number one, they started their first superhero, which was the android version of Human Torch. The original Human Torch wasn't a person; it was an android. He was the very first Marvel superhero, and then shortly after there was Namor the Submariner. Technically, so some people, I gotta say this because there's gonna be some comic book nerds that try to check me on this. Technically, Submariner, Namor came first, but he wasn't originally a part of Marvel or Timely Comics at the time. He was originally a character made by a different company that licensed content to Timely Comics. But when Marvel number one came out, Android was presented first as their superhero. So technically, and we all know technically correct is the best form of correct. So technically, yeah, uh, the Android Human Torch was the very first Marvel superhero. Although Namor did come out earlier, but he was not originally a comic book character for Marvel. But he did come out in the same publication, Marvel number one, as Android the Human Torch, but he technically was first, so he's recognized as the first Marvel superhero. But going back to what I was saying, Marvel has a long history of producing horror comics, whereas DC, starting off under his original company, National Periodicals, was mostly known for like, um, the detective and private eye type stuff. So yes, I do read comics, Sandra. Um, Eric says I did not know all the Evil Dead movies were connected until this weekend. You didn't? Because it's a big franchise. Um, starting back, because I think the original Evil Dead was I'm thinking like the late '80s, mid late '80s, right? Then there was Evil Dead 2, then Ash, then there was the Army of Darkness, and then there was the then I think there was and then I think that was the conclusion, Army of Darkness or whatever. Back then in the '90s, till they revamped it, and then they had that series on Showtime when they brought back Ash. So that was like a ongoing series. I think it was a Showtime or Hulu. I think it was Showtime. I think I think it was Showtime. But yeah, so then they had the series, and then I think they did a reboot of Evil Dead, and then they did a continuation uh, of the original franchise. So Creepshow was funny. Yeah, Creepshow is a classic. I love Creepshow. I think Creepshow is one of Stephen King's stuff right there. I like Creepshow 1 and 2. Those were good. Eric says I never got into the Marvel zombie stuff. I have a few books from a small creative team called 656 Comics out of Mexico, and they have some great horror books I read each year. Okay. Well, I haven't read the Marvel zombie stuff, but I know that it is well liked. Um, I did like the What If episode of Marvel Zombies, and so it made sense they spun it off into its own series, but they messed it up by again turning it into another MCU type of thing. It's like they just can't Marvel Studios just can't stop from undercutting themselves. Like maybe it's a girl boss thing because it was made way before they started responding to the criticism and scaling back all the identity politics like they did with Thunderbolts and Captain America. You can see with Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts, they scaled back all the identity politics and stuff. Um, but with Marvel Zombies, it's back in full effect. It's straight up girl boss MCU type stuff. But the Marvel's but the episode that it is spun off from and What If from 3 years ago was a really good episode. And that was from the second season of What If. The third season, I you can you can rock with the first two seasons, but the third season I wouldn't do it. The third season was really unwatchable. Um, but as far as the actual comic books, they were pretty good. I don't know if the Marvel Zombies was either. I don't know if it was in the comic books a what part of the What If, um, the the their What If label, or if it was on one of their uh, alternate universes outside of the 616 universe. But I do know that it was. I know that most people like it. Melissa as well was OT Android. What do you, OT? I think that's a typo. You said that's interesting. I just learned that. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, the very first Marvel superhero was an android Human Torch. So he's not connected to the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. Those are two separate characters. Um, but plus another reason Namor wasn't considered the first superhero, not besides the Human Torch appearing first, was also because Namor came out as an anti-hero when he first appeared, not as a like bona fide superhero like the android Human Torch was. Eric says the cryptid Kryptonals, where cryptids team up and save the world. Undead Border, which is a post-apocalyptic zombie book taking place at the El Paso border. And Dogman, who was a Texas Ranger that got cursed. Okay, those sound interesting. There are a lot of indie comics out there that are worth time for people to check out. I'm gonna give a shameless plug to my friend, or used to be friend. He, I guess, unfriended me after the presidential election because I had I didn't even say that I was voting for Trump. I just said that I dislike Kamala. I'm sorry if that offended him so much, and I really don't care since he doesn't even live in the U.S. anymore. So to have for his personal identity be so caught up in American politics when he doesn't even live in America anymore is pretty retarded to me. But I'm sorry. Probably shouldn't use that word here. It need to be family friendly. Sorry, YouTube. But yeah, although I think it's quite apropos to say someone is being retarded when they're displaying behavior that seems rather reminiscent of someone with a low performing intellect. Anyway, Mullen says Viking was the first black Marvel good guy. He was super powered, was everything, supercomputers and understanding them, and like a supercomputer genius. I don't know if maybe he was the first black Marvel good guy, but the first black superhero in Marvel was Black Panther. Um, well, he's the first black superhero, period. Marvel, DC, or any other comic book imprint was Black Panther. Um, but maybe Viking was the first black comic book character. I don't know, but the first black superhero was Black Panther. He came out in the '60s, and he originally, when his first appearance was as a villain to the Fantastic Four, but in that very, towards the end of that very comic book, he had amended his ways, and they, you know, became friendly. So, because I have a facsimile reprint of that comic book of his first appearance in Fantastic Four. So he is the first black superhero. Um, Eric says, "I thought Black Panther was Marvel's first black." Oh yeah, he is. He is Marvel's first black superhero, just like I was saying. It's past 12, so all the neurodivergent trolls are coming out. Too bad you can't fix stupid. But anyway, Moon says, yeah, before Black Panther and Luke Cage were written about, I believe. Well, he might have been a character in Marvel, but he wasn't the first black superhero. The first black superhero in canon is Black Panther. Marvel has stated that themselves, and it's a matter of also just Black history that Black Panther is the first black superhero. Now, were there other black characters in comic books before Black Panther? Yes, that's definitely true. But he is recognized as the first black superhero. Eric says I tapped out on the MCU a long time ago. Yeah, that's completely understandable, bro. I didn't even think I was going to go. I had no intentions of seeing another MCU film after Deadpool and Wolverine. I've stated that last year. I was like, I'm not going to see any more Marvel stuff. But then Fantastic Four came out, and I was hearing good stuff. Like people who were highly critical of MCU stuff, like the Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic, like they said it was actually good. And I'm like, these guys dog the crap out of Marvel movies. So when they said that Fantastic Four was actually good, I was like, I might have to check this out. And it just so happened that I had got all these free promos from YouTube. Like, they gave me that clapper board that you guys see in my videos. Um, and they gave me like a free 6 month membership to premium, YouTube Premium. So I've been enjoying that. And they gave me a free AMC movie ticket. So I was like, oh, free AMC movie ticket? Oh, I'm going to go see Fantastic Four because I'd already saw Superman just a week or two prior when it first came out. So I was like, I might as well see Fantastic Four because there's nothing. I was like, there's nothing really coming out that I want to see probably until next summer. Um, so I'm not. I wasn't going to wait until a year, and then the ticket offer might have expired by then. I'm not sure the length of the ticket validity. Um, but in any case, I was like, I'm gonna go see Fantastic Four, and it didn't disappoint. Like I said, it didn't require you to know anything prior from all the other MCU movies, and they didn't girl boss it. Like I was scared that because there was initial reports saying that uh that the Invisible Woman or Sue Storm was gonna like basically outshine the rest of the Fantastic Four. That didn't happen. So all of them made contributions, and they actually made Johnny Storm a better character in this because he's now a scientist in this version. He's not just a he's not just their little he's not just like a daredevil pilot anymore. He's actually one of the all four of them are scientists in this version. But Mr. Fantastic is still the genius of all of them combined. So, but he says, yeah. But Eric says, yeah, I'm a comic nerd, and it was hurting my soul seeing what they were doing. Yeah, I mean, they just ruined so many good characters, like Taskmaster. How do you ruin Taskmaster? Like, Taskmaster is one of the best. Is like one of the best mercenaries in Marvel, except for like Deadpool. And it was like the funny thing is Deadpool is actually like kryptonite to Taskmaster because since Taskmaster can memorize everyone's moves, he can't do that with Deadpool because he's insane. So he can't he can't use Deadpool's moves against him because he everything he does is chaotic and unpredictable. But they messed it up not just by making Taskmaster a girl, but changing Taskmaster's entire story, and they messed up other characters too. So we don't even have to go through all of them. So we're completely on board. What is this? Yeah, could be wrong. Yeah, Viking. Like I said, Viking could be a character that existed before Black Panther, but he's not the first black superhero. Black Panther definitely is. Um, but I'll have to look up Viking. Actually, I can look that up now. Are you talking about the guy named Boldoff? Boldoff the Black, also known as Viking Hulk, is a Marvel Comics character who embodies the spirit of the Norse warriors. He's a Viking leader from the late ninth century who gained his strength and power by praying to Thor before every battle. His pride and arrogance eventually led to his downfall as he stopped praying for victory and instead prayed to Loki, who directed him on a quest for power. This quest resulted in Boldoff drinking the blood of a dragon, which granted him the ability to transform into the Viking Hulk whenever he was enraged. The Viking Hulk is known for his superhuman physical abilities, weapon mastery, and transformation into a berserk monster. He has been a member of the Avengers and has faced off against Thor in combat. Mm, yeah, that's he definitely doesn't predate Black Panther. Like I said, Black Panther was invented in the late '60s, so um, he just sounds sort of like a derivative character of Thor. But anyway, he said Thor Ragnarok was the line in the sand for me. I actually like Thor Ragnarok. That was like the best of the Thor films because the first one wasn't good. The second one had the second one was just too morbid for a MCU film. Like I get that they tried to give it some gravitas, but it just wasn't it just wasn't something that was exciting to watch. Eric says people cutting off friends and family over politics will always throw me off. We have to learn to disagree respectfully. True that. Like I said, my friend and I, Fred, the guy who created the comic book I was about to give a shameless plug to, which I forgot to, is called Rocket Girl, and the name of his comic book company is called Pocket Full of Pills. He's a so he's an indie comic book maker and makes toys for those comics too, out of the Philippines. So he's the only black comic book company slash toy maker in the Philippines. And his character, Rocket Girl, is actually a Filipino woman. Um, his wife is Filipino, of course. So that's how we bonded because we're both from Maryland. Like we bonded meeting at a comic book convention in Manila. But on his social media is filled with him just ranting about politics. And mind you, I have never disagreed with him on anything politically. Like I mean, I've never come to any of his posts and leave comments disagreeing with him. He never really did so with me either. But I guess he took it a, I guess I took it a step too far, saying that I didn't agree with Kamala because I found her a reprehensible politician from her past as a prosecutor in California. Not to mention that she'd seen wishy washy on what she actually stood for in her, you know, with her platform, and the fact that people were calling her black and she's not. It's like she was Jamaican and Indian, and people kept saying, "Well, Jamaicans are black." I was like, her father on his, you know, on her birth certificate is called Jamaican, but anyone from the West Indies or who have lived around West Indian people know that just because you're Jamaican doesn't make you black. There are Chinese people in Jamaica, there are white people in Jamaica, there are Indians in Jamaica. There's a lot of Indians in Jamaica because his mom, her mom is also from India. I mean, her mom is also from Jamaica as well, I believe, and she's Indian. The father is probably called Jamaican because of his dark skin. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a black person. So, and so that's why I kept saying they need to stop being disingenuous because I remember when she was the first elected to the U.S. Senate, they were saying she was the first Indian senator. Now they're trying to, you know, say that she's biracial, black and Indian. I'm like, okay, whatever. But in any case, I do find it very weird that people cut people off family. Now I could see if you actually engage in like a full throated pause uh, uh, argument with someone that leads to, you know, people not wanting to talk to you anymore. I get that, but if you didn't even have, if there was no open disagreement between you and another party, I don't understand unfriending people. But this is what people were doing on the left. They were basically, and there was people on the left even telling each other, you know, anyone that's voting for Trump or whatever, you need to unfriend them. You need to stop following them. You don't need to go to family dinner, go to family Thanksgiving with people who disagree with you politically, because it all stems from this notion on the left that disagreement equals harm. And it's like people can disagree with each other doesn't mean they want harm to come to you or to people like you who hold these views. That is a very weird outcome. This is why you have people in certain groups among the left, like the LGBTQ and others, basically saying if you disagree with them, that is a form of violence. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's you guys failed at logic. And then they try to say, well, logic and stuff like that is a part of the patriarchy. You know, I'm like, so you're gonna try to reason against reason and think that is not self-defeating, and then in place of that you'll just say, well, if you don't agree with me, then you're wishing me harm, and that by disagreeing with me you're causing violence. You're literally causing violence by disagreeing, or by saying that you know that you find certain things either irrational or immoral. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to the subject, guys. But yeah, that's kind of crazy. I have never, as much as I disagree with someone, have ever cut them off because of I disagree with their politics or their religion. especially being that I have a background in philosophy, people in the philosophy community can vehemently disagree with each other on nearly in everything, and still go out for a beer afterwards. I've been to philosophy symposiums, whatever. I've been to a philosophy symposium or two where, you know, someone has, given a lecture on something, and then their peers who then after the lecture will bring up every reason why they completely disagree and think everything that person has said is totally wrong, and they are buddies. So that I think it shows a lack of intellectual maturity where people think that you have to agree with them for you to, for them to like you. That like you have to accept their beliefs. You can you don't have to be friends with someone. I think the most you can respect their beliefs. You don't have to accept them. You don't even have to like them, but just have respect for that person regardless of their beliefs. Whatever. Here we go. So Carlin says Luke Cage was the first FBA Marvel superhero. Now that that is true because Black Panther technically was African superhero. I mean, it's funny though because the creators of Black Panther weren't black either. they were two. They were Jewish men. Like it was like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were the creators of Black Panther, and then they did get input from black people though for the character. Luke Cage was, yeah, I would say the first like Black American superhero, I believe. That I'm not sure because DC may have beaten them because you had like Black Lightning, uh, and I won't say Blade because Blade was first a super villain and then he became an anti-hero. He's never been quote unquote superhero. He's been always in like that anti-hero status, like people like Deadpool and Namor, Punisher. Um, but I, um, hmm, I'm not sure. You can look that up, but I don't know if Black Lightning beat him on that one as being the first Black American superhero. Because I know Black Lightning came out in the 70s, and I believe Luke Cage also came out in the 70s. So I don't know who appeared first. Because I would have seen the Fantastic Four movie if they did not replace Norman Rad as Silver Surfer. Yeah, that was the main reason I wasn't going to watch it. But again, I got to go see it for free, so so if it sucked, it wouldn't have mattered because I didn't have to pay for the movie, right? So that's why I was like, when I got the free when I got the free AMC ticket from YouTube, shout out to YouTube, thank you for that. Um, when I got that, I was like, I'll try it out. It was actually good. And the reason, so I see the reason why they wanted to use a female Silver Surfer in place of Norrin Rad. And I think the main reason was to give Johnny Storm a love interest. He basically started hitting on her as soon as he saw her. Um, so I think that was the motivation for making a female Silver Surfer was to basically to give Johnny Storm a love interest in the film. Eric says, did Luke Cage come out before Blade? Again, I'm not sure, but Blade doesn't count as a superhero because he, again, like I said, he started off as a as a super villain, and then he became an anti-hero, which is funny because, like I said, Black Panther in his first appearance with the Fantastic Four, he started off as a villain as well, but he had already mended his ways by the end of that very comic book. So he that was in that comic book and that comic book alone, and he had already made amends with the Fantastic Four at the end of the comic book. Whereas Blade never became like a good guy. He was always like an anti-hero sort of person. So I never count him as a superhero just because he wasn't a good guy. Yeah, and I'm not trying to be pedantic, but I would say the same thing for the Punisher. The Punisher is not a is not a superhero. He's clearly an anti-hero at best, and sometimes he crosses the border into villain territory. Same thing with Deadpool. He's an anti-hero who sometimes can cross into the villain territory, which is why you both have Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe 1 and 2, and they just released a trilogy that's coming out this year. There's going to be Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe Part 3. Um, and then after, they also had The Punisher kills the Marvel Universe because, again, they're the two biggest Marvel anti heroes. Melissa, I did see it. It was good. I would not suggest going to theaters. I'll say wait till it's on Netflix or whatever. But yes, I agree with Marvel movies. I was kind of done after the last Guardians. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I think, was good, actually. And I think it was good because James Gunn always had a finished script when he did his movies. Unlike most of these Marvel films, they start filming before they even have a script finished for the film. And it shows with the generic fight scenes and sort of the cut and paste quality of the movie. This is why James Gunn now as co-head of DC Studios insisted he won't make any film. He won't put any film into production until they have a script ready to go. This is why Supergirl is coming out before Superman 2 because they already had a script ready to go. This is why they got Clayface coming out before Batman because Clayface already had a script ready, and he also he because I was correcting my friend on that because he was like they're gonna show Batman and Clayface. I was like, no, they're not. That's a horror film. He was like, no, they've already said. I don't know where he gets his information from sometimes, but he was like, no, James Gunn said. I was like, no, he did not. So I went on, went online and searched it. And it says James Gunn clearly states that Batman will not appear in Clayface because he wants this to be uh, a horror sort of a horror film that's not attached to the wider world of what's going on in DC in the with the DC superheroes, and that they will show Batman won't make his appearance until Brave and the Bold. But I like Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It was some touching scenes there with Rocket Raccoon and his friends. Eric the Silver Surfer and Galactus are my favorite characters in Marvel, and I was planning on seeing a movie until the trailer came out knowing Red was not the Surfer. Well, I already knew it before the trailer came out that they had decided to gender swap Silver Surfer. Now, I mean, to be fair, they use Shia LaBeouf, who was his girlfriend, but in an alternative universe had became Silver Surfer. And since this Fantastic Four does not take place on Earth 616, but in the alternate universe, that's kind of how they got away with saying, well, we're going to use an alternate version of Silver Surfer because we're using a Fantastic Four from a different world. They live in this. They live on a world where it's sort of like the 1960s, but it's futuristic. Um, and like I said, Shia LaBeouf was used in place of Norrin Red because they wanted her to be a love interest to Johnny Storm. So Melissa says I only go to one of Gambit, Deadpool, a good Storm backstory gets a movie. Storm. Storm is not getting a separate movie. I, I don't know if it were you or someone else talking about Storm getting her own movie. She's not getting her own movie. That's I've heard no plans whatsoever. Um, the X Men are the original X Men cast. Well, half of the original X Men cast from the Fox Marvel films from the 2000s, they are going to be in the Doomsday film in Secret Avengers. Um, but I don't think they're using Holly Berry. They're not reprising her role as Storm, but she's not getting her own movie. Like I, yeah, I don't see that happening. I mean, look how long it took for them to do a Black Widow film. There, I don't see them doing a Storm movie. But both Gambit and Deadpool are slated to be in Doomsday as well. We already knew Gambit was. Deadpool wasn't originally slated, probably just because I think they were still working out the uh, working out the details with Ryan Reynolds. But he is now going to be in Doomsday, and the Gambit will be played by what's his name that played him in Deadpool versus Wolverine. He's going to be back, but he said he's not going to use the heavy the heavy Cajun accent like he did in the movie in Deadpool and Wolverine. Eric says I did love the Superman movie though. Yeah. Moonla's asking Eric. He's asking said Eric Contrarian. Didn't you feel Galactus was really small? The comics he was huge. Earth was like the size of his tooth. Yeah. So like my thing with that is I think they're using his original appearance from the 60s. Like again, this movie was an homage to the Silver Age of Marvel. If you look at his first appearance in the Fantastic Four films, he was a smaller character. He wasn't this larger than Earth size character in the original appearance of him. So they decided to go with his Silver Age version of him. So, um, so I wasn't mad at that because originally I was like, they kind of, because I know a lot of people did complain. They said they felt like Galactus was nerfed a bit, and that is a fair criticism. They did nerf Galactus. However, I will say they still, even though they nerfed Galactus, they did stay true to his Silver Age appearance. So I'll say that they can always bring him back and put him on the scale of how we know him today. Plus, we did that. Plus, also that wasn't the first appearance of Galactus in the Marvel films. His first appearance was actually in the Multiverse of Madness as part of the what do they call it? The Trinity or whatever. Um, Let me look that up. Can't remember the. Uh, what do they call the? Shoot, not the Vishanti. The dang it, dang it, dang it. Mm, what? The Living Tribunal. That's it. The Living Tribunal. they showed the first time they showed Galactus was on a cosmic scale, and Doctor Strange Marvel Multiverse of Madness when he was part of the Living Tribunal, because Marvel geeks know he forms part of the Living Tribunal. So they did show him in his most powerful form in that movie. For people who remember that, Carden says the movie Sinners was scary. Ryan Coogler did a good job. Yeah, so one of my friends was had some glowing recommendations for Sinners, and I told him I wasn't interested. First of all, I didn't even know about the film until um, it came out. I don't know if it wasn't well marketed or I just never paid attention, but literally I didn't know about it until I heard movie critics talking about it and saying that it was good, because I didn't when it came out. I don't remember. And you guys tell me, do you guys remember marketing for the Sinners when it first came out? Because I don't remember any marketing for it. Like I said, I didn't hear about Sinners until movie critics were reviewing the film and saying it was good. My biggest criticism I heard about it was that it was sort of like um, the Dust Till Dawn. It was sort of like a black version of Dust Till Dawn. But other than that, I haven't really heard anything bad about it. The reason I didn't want to see it was just because I don't really like Ryan Coogler's films, like Black Panther 1 and 2. Like if I take like I'll be brutally honest. I love Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther, but I don't like Ryan Coogler film. Like Chadwick Boseman did better as Black Panther in films outside of the Black Panther films, like when he was in Civil War, when he was in Infinity War, when he was in Endgame, even when he played in What If. So that was his last. A lot of people didn't know that because they kept that as a surprise. In the very first season of What If on Disney Plus was the last appearance of Chadwick Boseman as um, as the Black Panther character, and it was a good send off, by the way. But yeah, the Marvel Studios kept that secret until the What If series came out, and then the first season, we found out that was Chadwick Boseman's final appearance. Well, not appearance, because he was a voice. He voiced the character as a voice actor in this version of the character, but that was his last time playing it, and they really did a good job with their depiction of him in that What If. So for that alone, I was going to see season 1 of What If, just because that was the last time we were going to see Chadwick Boseman reprise the role. But I don't like Ryan Coogler's films. Like I don't know, was Fruitvale Station any good? Because that was another film of his. But I don't like how he did Black Panther because they made it a family rivalry. And it's like, why does it have to be a family rivalry? Because in the comic books, um, Claw was his nemesis, but they killed Claw halfway through the movie and then had him fight his cousin, Killmonger. I'm like, it would have been better to use Killmonger as maybe as his nemesis in a sequel instead of in the very first movie, making it black on black crime. Let me stop playing, but no, seriously. Like I said, I would love the Black Panther film just because it was Chadwick Boseman playing him, but I don't like Ryan Coogler's style. And then in the second film, it was black on brown crime. Like, why did the Latinos have to be fighting the black people? They should have been fighting. They should have been fighting the UN. They was trying to steal the vibranium from them, which is what Namor was actually saying to them in the movie. He was like, why fight each other when we should be bonding over the fact that we need to protect our way of life and protect our vibranium from these colonizers? Like, that should have been the film. Like, yes, Namor and Black Panther have been arch rivals in the comics as well, but the whole film, but again, it just, yeah, I can't say I like Ryan Coogler is now. Don't get me wrong, Ryan Coogler is a good filmmaker. I won't take that away from him, but I don't enjoy his movies, if that makes sense. Uh, Melissa says, yeah, note some guy named Viking. He wore white and was a super genius and didn't know. I don't know. It was a trivia test I took, not the first superhero, just one of the first black heroes, whatever, because I chose Panther. But yeah, again, yeah, Black Panther is recognized by Marvel Comics as as their first black superhero, and recognized in the in comics in general as the first black superhero. Like no, like the fact that that that's a trivia that most people aren't even aware of shows that Viking doesn't count. It it would be like calling uh it would be like calling the Shadow a superhero predating Batman when he wasn't really Phantom wasn't like a, I mean, well, like the Shadow wasn't a superhero. He just sort of like gave inspiration to Bat to the making of Batman for Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Let me look it up again. But yeah, he's definitely not the first black superhero. Uh, but again, it just keeps pointing me to Bodolf the Black. So, like I said, that Viking character is not even. I can't even get it off of. Let me take it off of Bing. Go to Google. Mm. Eric says galactic size and physical appearance changes based off who is looking at him. He takes the form of the race of the person looking at him. So what is he like? Gozer the Gozerian? Choose the form of the destructor. No, 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 no one fall for that. Uh-uh. Race your minds. You think of something and it'll come back and he was like, no. He's like, what did you do, Ray? I just thought of something from my childhood. Something so harmless. It couldn't possibly hurt us. The State Puff Marshmallow Man. So the Galactus is like goes to the Gozerian. He takes the form of the Destructor. Yeah, so it says the original black superheroes in Marvel, the first widely recognized black superhero in American mainstream comics is Black Panther T'Challa, who debuted in Fantastic Four number 52 in 1966. Like I said, I have that comic book right here. Not the original, but a reprint, of course, because if I had the original, that'd be worth like some serious coin. It said following Black Panther, Falcon, Sam Wilson became Marvel's first prominent African American. So yeah, it wasn't Luke Cage, Carlton. It was Falcon. Falcon was the first Black American superhero. I thought it was Black Lightning from DC. Was it yeah, Falcon who debuted uh, in 1969 within Captain America comics He said these characters established the era of black superheroes in Marvel and paved the way for later iconic black characters like Misty Knight, Luke Cage, and Storm. Yeah, there's no character that predates Panther named Viking, and they keep when I bring it up, they just keep pointing me back to Bodolf the Black, who is a black who's notable for his characterization as a black Viking. This is but Black Panther remains the first major black superhero in Marvel Comics, historically and culturally recognized as groundbreaking in the 1960s. Uh, yeah, there's yeah. So I don't know where you did the um, trivia, but yeah, Black Panther, like I said, is widely known as the first black superhero by everyone I've known and by Marvel themselves. So even when I went to a black museum, like they showed off Black Panther as the first black superhero. Um, he said, but the test was an Avengers test. Yeah, so Boldolf the like I said, Boldolf the Black did briefly join the Avengers, and he's strong enough to fight Thor, which is saying a lot. He said, so he may have been an early Avenger. All I know it was super computer genius and something else. No matter, Marvel has some awful characters. Well, Avengers has had a lot of changes in its team lineup, and you got to remember there's multiple Avengers teams. You have Avengers, you have Dark Avengers, you have West Coast Avengers, you have Secret Avengers, um, you have Young Avengers, you have the Champions. Um, I think there's a UK Avengers, the UK, and like there's so many different Avengers teams, and even the main team has changed membership, a, a lot in the past 50 years. So Eric says I hated Thor Ragnarok because they mashed two huge stories together and did not execute either one. Well, yeah, but none of the none of the comic book movies follow directly from any of the comic books. What they will do, they will. I don't know any. I mean, you could, but you can say that, like I said, you can say that of all the superhero movies, none of them will use just one comic book specifically. They will mash up different stuff. All of them have done that pretty much. The only time you get movies that follow directly from the books, more or less, are the animated ones. Usually, all the live action films do a mashup of several of the comics. Eric says War World Hulk was a huge story where Hulk took over a planet and had a wife and children. Yeah, I know, but like I said, well, for one, it wasn't a Hulk movie because Hulk was still being licensed to Marvel Studios from Universal Studios because they own the rights to the Hulk in film because Marvel sold it to them back in the 90s or 80s, whatever. They license, they sold the licensing rights to a lot of their main characters back then to stave off bankruptcy because Marvel had almost went under and were almost bought out by DC Comics. Vice versa, um, in the 80s, DC had almost, I think in the 80s, DC almost went bankrupt and almost their sold off their characters to Marvel. But I remember Marvel saying they didn't want all of DC superheroes; they just wanted Superman and Batman. And DC was like, "Nah." so so they never sold to each other. But it was a like I said, when DC was at their lowest point, they almost sold themselves to Marvel. And when Marvel was at their lowest point in the 90s, they almost sold themselves off to DC. But instead, what they did, they just sold the franchising and film rights to their major characters like Spider Man, Hulk, Namor, uh, X Men. And so by that time, that's why you never saw that many Hulk movies, because to do a Hulk movie, they had to get permission from Universal Studios. So the only time they could use Hulk was in the inclusion of an Avengers film. That's why we could never get things like um, World War Hulk, because that would be outside of the Avengers thing unless they turned it into an Avengers film. But I wish they could have done. Well, they they weren't doing the Illuminati at that time, so I guess that would have been difficult unless they made the Avengers the stand-in for the Illuminati. But I don't know. But in any case, yeah, the Ragnarok was a mashup of several comic books, but literally every film they've done has been a mashup. Civil War is one of the best Marvel films ever, and it was nothing like the comic book crossover event, Civil War. It was almost completely nothing like what happened in the comic books, but it's still one of their best films, despite that. Eric says Ragnarok, all of Asgard dies and becomes reborn on Earth. They just tiptoed around both stories. Yeah. Carden says, I remember that if you didn't vote for Kamala, you're not invited to Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah, like, and again, this ninja wasn't even living in the US. He's living in the Philippines, but he's making his whole identity about American politics, which is rubbing people the wrong way. Because even in the Philippines, people were getting tired of his antics. Like, there was some places he said he he didn't feel welcome in the Philippines because he was saying they were too conservative. I'm like, first of all, you shouldn't be even you being a guest in their country, you shouldn't even be talking on their politics. And as far as your own American politics, why are you pushing that on these folks? Like, he didn't realize how annoying he was, because I would see him on multiple social media platforms, and I wasn't stalking him, but if you're friends with someone, they will, you know, Meta will push the content that they're in for you to see that your friends are connected to. And I will see him beefing with so many people on unrelated posts on politics. I'm like, I was like, it must be nice to be rich so that you have time to just argue with people online about politics when you're not getting paid to do so. Like, you would think he was a paid pundit at the time for the for the Democratic Party, the way he would just be on random um, comment threads, just trying to push this Democratic Party, like, talking points. Like, dude, give it a rest. So whatever. I'm not going to miss someone who decided not to talk to me anymore because of Kamala. So fuck him, fuck her, fuck the Democrats. Eric says, Moonlit, are you by chance referring to Viking the Black from the New Gods in DC Comics? He was saying Marvel though, Eric. So that's why I'm confused, because the only thing I could see from Marvel was someone called Bodolf the Black, who was literally a black Viking who became a superpower because he prayed to Thor every time he went into battle, and then later prayed to Loki. Eric says, so Luke Cage was released in 72, Black Lightning was 77, but Viking the Black was in 71. Oh, okay. Okay, so he wasn't okay, so he wasn't spelling it correctly. That's why I couldn't get it. It's just Vykin. That's still a DC character. That's not Marvel. That's another thing. He was saying it was Marvel, but Viking is a DC character, and he's one of the new gods, I guess, right? Viking the Black was a member of the Forever People. He's a retcon version of the story shows that what explains that Viking was one of the five young Earthlings selected from different points of Earth history by High Father to be raised in New Genesis. These groups grew up as close friends and became the Forever People. Viking was originally son of a Roman Empire legionnaire in an African country. Yeah, that definitely doesn't. That's definitely nowhere near that. Black Panther came out in '66. Because by the time that Jack Kirby went to DC to create the New Gods, that's when he was pissed off with Marvel for how they screwed him over, and he was like, "F Marvel," and he went to DC to do his stuff. He got mistreated by Marvel so many times. I remember the first time he was actually fired by Marvel because he was doing independent. He was doing stuff independent of the company. He was doing some independent contract work, I believe. He got first fired, and then he came back to Marvel, and that's when he started that long streak of success with Stan Lee and what's the other guy um, created for Spider Man. But anyway, those four guys, or three guys rather, just was hitting it out the park. And then they screwed him over. Then he went to DC. That's when he created the New Gods. And that was clearly like in the '70s. So yeah, yeah. This Viking Vykin. He was with DC, not Marvel. He was part of the New Gods. Just once I heard New Gods, I would already known that this doesn't. This comes after Black Panther because the New Gods didn't come out until the '70s, and that's when Jack Kirby quit Marvel. Mm. So when did this come out? Yep. Forever People #1, March 1971. Yeah. But Blade's first appearance was in '73, so even if you consider him a hero, Luke Cage came out first. Yep. And like I said, Sam Wilson was the first Black American superhero after Black Panther, who was the first Black superhero. Um, yes, Guardians was great, and I wanted my Marvel model ride to end there before the new wave with different agendas. Still okay to keep an eye on Marvel, but not stuck to it. Lean towards DC for a while. um, Eric says I only like Guardians one. I liked it. I might watch the other down the road. Part two wasn't. Part two was the weakest of the trilogy, though. Eric, I'll be honest. You're probably not gonna like Guardians two as much as part one. Um, it's funny. Don't get me wrong. Part two is funny, but um, it's not as memorable as part one. But part three is better than two. Part three is part three is like more emotional. He said they are fun, best Marvel soundtracks. Yeah, because James Gunn, he always likes having that musical element in his movies. He does that with Superman too. He puts there's some musical elements of Superman because that's part of what James Gunn does. He did that in Suicide Squad as well. Carter says people should be happy that they didn't have the Human Torch in a relationship with the male version of Silver Surfer. I know, right? Because this is Marvel. Marvel would have, well, not Marvel, but not just Marvel. This is Disney. Marvel is part of Disney, and Disney has been pushing LGBTQ stuff for the past uh, 10 years in their content. So, like Pixar and all that crap. They even turned Doctor Who gay. So, Icon says the one above all with Smoke Galactus. Well, yeah, but I mean, but Galactus, the Living Tribunal answers to the one above all, though. So I don't think I don't know of any storylines where the Living Tribunal went against the one above all. As far as I know, the Living Tribunal is basically acts as the enforcer for the one above all. Like the one above all doesn't even get into the fray. Sort of like the presence in DC. So God in Marvel is one above all, and he physically resembles Jack Kirby. um, the in DC, the God with a capital G is the presence. He just looks like an old man from the 1940s, like an old businessman. One says I miss Chadwick for real, for real. Yeah, he said a dude who played Lafayette in True Blood was a great actor too. He died like Amy Whitehouse quitting hard alcohol cold turkey 3 days later, body shut off, and they slapped. Don't know who that is. Never watched it. Eric says alcohol withdrawals are deadly. You have to be weaned off of it slowly. I didn't know that. I thought you could just do that cold turkey. He said, but I'll just say Ironheart and the heavy LGBT agenda movies is rubbing one out too. I'm over it. I wanted my memory to stop after Thor and Guardians. It's 1 o'clock, guys, so I'm about to go. He said, I love Gambit and Deadpool and Blade. Yeah. Yeah, bringing back Wesley Snipes as Blade was good. And it was funny. He was like, there's only one. He said, there's only one Blade. There only be one Blade, which is funny because right around that time is when they canceled the Blade film. Starring Mashallah Ali. Although he is playing Blade, uh, the voice actor version of him, the voice of him in the new Marvel Zombies series. Harry says I like Black Panther the character, but I do not like any of the movies. Yeah, same. Like I don't like Ryan Coogler's films. I like Chadwick Boseman playing Black Panther though, but I think he gave his strongest performance in movies in the movies that weren't tied to Ryan Coogler. He did it well in Civil War and in Infinity War and in Endgame and in What If. But and then well, obviously he wasn't in part two because he had already passed away, so he was only in that one Ryan Coogler film. But I didn't like that film either, even with him more so that he wasn't in it because the way like I said about Black Panther 2 when it first came out, it was like getting getting every toy uh in a certain like playset. You get everything that you wanted in that playset except for the main character. So I was like, so if you got master, if you were a collector of Masters in the Universe, you had every single character, every single playset like Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain and the Hordak Fortress and Eternia. You had all the vehicles. You had all the bad guys. You had all the good guys. But you didn't have He-Man. That's what Black Panther 2 felt like. It was like everything but the actual He-Man. So it just made the movie incomplete. Melissa is really Eric. He said Panther 1 and all his cameos was very good. I didn't see the second one because his passing. I didn't like I said, the first one when it first came out, I think people just liked it just off the strength of Chadwick Boseman's presence in the movie itself. But if you look at it now, you know, objectively without looking at it nostalgically because of Chadwick Boseman, it wasn't that good. Like it it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't great. My phone's about to die too, so yeah, that's even more sign that I need to end this. Is it Eric says the Black Panther movies were too socially motivated for me, didn't enjoy them. That's a fair criticism. I think that's a fair criticism. Like I said, I don't like the fact that they had two cousins, they had the black people fighting the black people at the end of the movie when his arch nemesis was Claw, but they killed them halfway through the movie. Melissa says, "Yeah, I didn't care. Vikings is the Snapchat, and I only thought of it because I was a trivia. It was a trivia question on Marvel Alliance video game PS3. Hmm. How is that a trivia? But he's a DC character. Like we just discovered, but he was a DC character. Unless the trivia question was something dealing with Jack Kirby himself. But he's not a Marvel character. He's a DC character. Viking the Black. He was an Earthling brought to New Genesis by the High Father and raised as one of his adopted children. But that was in 71 because that's when again Jack Kirby said F you to Marvel and went over to DC. Uh, Eric says, no, not knocking anyone who likes them, but that isn't my taste. That's fair. Like, we all have our taste when it comes to comic books, superheroes, fiction in general. Like, I'm sure people would be like, I know people probably think I'm Delulu for loving Batman because some people are just overly convinced that Batman is fascist now. I wonder why, but you know, Melissa's Viking or Viking. I'll search. No, it's Vykin. That's the name of the character, and he's with DC Comics. The only Viking for Marvel is called Bodolf the Black, and he comes out of the Thor comics. Eric says, I think you are referring to Viking the Black. Yeah. So yes, Galactus is like Gozer. Yeah. One says I'm getting a weird result. He said I don't know. It was an old character, like one appearance and then spoken of. I've seen the image. I can't find it. 7 different results and 2 Vikings and DC. Yeah. So I know the Thor one's this guy I'm thinking of helped the Avengers in an orange looking spaceship. But so you're mashing up 2 characters. You're mashing up 2 different characters. You're mashing Bodolf the Black, who's a Marvel character who did join the Avengers, with Viking the Black, who is a DC comic book character. Because there's no character called Viking in Marvel that is Bodolf the Black, who is a Black Viking, versus Viking the Black, who's that's the name of the character, who is a New Genesis character from DC Comics. You're confusing those 2. See, you're never ending. I'll find it and text you. Don't waste time on that. Definitely must fact check and not just throw it out there. My bad. It could be Viking Venom, Asgardian symbiote. Well, I did watch the new Fantastic Four, but I've already talked about it in a separate stream. This is about Halloween and spooky season, and scary movies and stuff like that, which I've gotten way off track. But yeah, I'm half remembering I'm mixing it with DC games. Say, did you have a booklet of DC or Marvel cards where it shows the power level in the back? You can just you can go to all any fandom has an accompanying wiki. DC has their own. There's a DC wiki. There's a Marvel wiki. Certain superheroes have their own wikis, like Batman or Superman. There's Lord of the Rings wiki, Star Trek wiki, Star Wars wiki. Not to mention most of these uh, companies have their own websites as well. But I never collected the cards back in the '90s because I know the Marvel uh, trading cards was popular back in the '90s, but I wasn't into it back then. Yeah, I remember as a teenager, I was trying to hide my nerdiness, so I wasn't even into that, except with like a few people. Uh, Slurm says Winter Soldier's the best MCU movie. I agree, completely agree. I got it here on my. Yeah, I, it's one of the few Marvel films I have right here. Captain America: Winter Soldier, Wolverine. It's the only Fox Marvel film I like. Well, not the only one I like, but the only one I saw worth buying. And Avengers, of course. But yeah, I think Winter Soldier is the best MC movie, and it had Robert Redford, who just passed away 2 weeks ago. R.I.P. to Robert Redford, who died in his 80s. But he having Robert Redford in that film gave it us made the movie more serious to me. Slam says podcast. So, oh, he's on no racism fashion. So respectfully, chat, knock off the racism, use adult words, or carry on elsewhere. Next time I'll boot you. I'm being respectfully nice today. Yeah, and if he doesn't, my little AI moderator will as well. You again, guys, you gotta remember past 12 a.m. you get a bunch of neurodivergent people, and I'm saying it because usually I'm being nice because usually I would just say you're gonna get a bunch of retards at night. Here's the thing: neurodivergent people make up the bulk of trolls late at night because don't have most of them suffer from parasomnia, which are sleeping disorders, and can't sleep in the night like neurotypical people do. And because of this also changes their cognitive and behavioral dispositions. Like they don't, in other words, they act inappropriately and think irrationally. So these are the people who. So if you wonder why late at night there's so many trolls, these aren't kids. These are mostly adults, because most of the kids are. Well, some of them are going to be kids if they have inattentive parents that allow them to be on their devices late at night. But the bulk of them are actual adults who are neurodivergent. This is why they say stupid stuff and think they're funny when they're not. Because I actually have a client who is neurodivergent, and she doesn't know. She has no respect. She has no respect for other people's boundaries. She constantly makes inappropriate jokes that has alienated her from all her friends, even had her kicked out of her own church because of her inappropriate behavior. And like she would like share like inappropriate things to a church group chat, like of a sexual nature. This is the sort of thing that neurodivergent people do. They have no they don't have boundaries, and they don't respect or understand certain inappropriate things until after the fact. And then they'll just keep doing it anyway because they don't have any filter. This is what makes up the bulk of trolls online, especially late at night. So if you're wondering why these people seem just super retarded, this is why. And which which is which basically means you can't reason with them. So don't try to reason with them. Just simply kick them out of if you got to deal with them, simply kick them out of your chat rooms, ban them from your ban them from your plat ban them from your channels. Don't try to reason with them. Don't try to understand with them. They are a lost cause because they literally don't have the capacity to do better. Um, Moonlit says, I admire Carlton up. Don't interrupt adult Gen X's convos about sports or comics unless you chip in. Actually, I wouldn't mind if Carlton would like to be a mod. Absolutely. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you have off topic or pressing questions, super chat bottom right or via screen, and he will address you immediately. Eric says Marvel owes almost all of their success to Jack Kirby. He made the majority of their roster. Yeah, Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, because some people might think that uh, Captain America is a Stan Lee character. Nope, that's not one of his characters. He's Jack Kirby and Joe Simon's character from the 40s. He came out in 1940. That's when Jack Kirby and Joe Simon created him. Um, Stan Lee reinvented the character back in the 60s when they brought him back out of obscurity because they weren't using him in the 50s because he no longer became a likable character after World War II because, you know, little things like the Korean War and Vietnam War made the American military kind of unpopular with the general population. They had different versions of Captain America come back in the 50s. They even tried to bring him back as a what was it, like a spy or something like that, to but they didn't bring him back in his full glory until like the 60s when Stanley brought him back and brought back his sidekick. Some people don't remember that Bucky Barnes was originally his teenage sidekick. Stanley didn't like teenage sidekicks, so he turned them into an adult, and that's when we got the concept of this. We got this adult Bucky Barnes because he didn't like the teenage sidekick thing, like with Batman and Robin. But yeah, Jack Kirby is definitely a unwritten hero. He was actually, and he's also he. Not only is he this is why when they did the one above all, he was basically an homage to Jack Kirby, and that's why when they showed the one above all in Marvel Comics, he's drawn to look like Jack Kirby. But yeah, Jack Kirby is a poster um, for comic book creators of how the industry can do you wrong, and he's not the only one. The guy who created the Watchmen and some other stuff in DC, he was sort of like he was mistreated like Jack Kirby was. So I can't remember his name. Is it Alan? Not Alan's. I can't remember. He said, Moon says I'm biased regarding this because Miss Moon gave me a hall pass for Nebula, who does film movies here, by the way. So I gave her a Josh Hartnett Hall Pass 30 Days and 30 Nights guy who comes to Bangkok. Wait, what? You met the? Did you actually meet the actress who plays Nebula? I didn't even know she was pretty until they showed her her. Well, they showed her animated version of her in the What If series. If she was no longer like all robot, like basically all, well, not all, you know what I mean, like she, if she wasn't a if she wasn't all cybernetic. And so they showed what she really looks like, well, the cartoon version of what she really looks like. And I was like, oh, that's what she's supposed to look like as a human. I was like, okay. But um yeah, I would never give my wife a hall pass, and I don't want one either. I He comes to Bangkok often. Oh, if he comes to Bangkok often, he's definitely getting it in. He said, "Man can dream." He said, "I do want Spawn back with Michael Jai White. I know how you feel about him, but then if not him, then the dude who was going to play New Blade. Well, no, the new person who's going to play Spawn is going to be Jamie Foxx, according to Todd McFarlane. I guess they're still working on that film. I haven't heard much about it since they brought it up to like since since 3 years ago. I haven't heard much about what's going on with the production. I just heard that Jamie Foxx was slated to play the Spawn in this new movie, and this movie wasn't going to be an action film. It was going to be a horror film because people were going to be seeing Spawn from the point of view of his victims. He's all caught up, sir. Cheers. Good night. Might go live in a few hours. Yep, yep. Uh, he's like, I can't be real friends with any human who dislikes Batman. Just saying. I get that, but you forget I have some Hotep and Pro Blackly Black friends, and they don't even read comics. Like he literally was calling Batman a fascist based off of what Zack Snyder did. I was like, dude, Zack. I said, first of all, you can't talk. You can't talk trash about Batman if you don't even read the comics. You don't. I said, you're not a count. I said, you don't count. And I said, I'm going to nerd gate. And people was like, oh, that's wrong. You can't be nerd gating. That's what they did to nerds in the first place. I'm like, so I'm going to nerd gate. You're not going to trash talk a character that you don't even know about. He does that a lot. He trash talks a lot of people he doesn't even know, um, based on what he's observed from other people talking about the person. I hate when people do that. But anyway, he thinks Batman is a fascist because of his portrayal in the Zack Snyder film Batman vs Superman. I was like, first of all, do you know that a lot of Batman fans hate that movie because of his portrayal in that movie? That is not at all like Batman. I was like, the fascist character is the Punisher. I was like, Batman is not fascist in the comic books nor in most other movies, only in that film. So, but yeah. Eric says I'm off the bed. Great stream tonight. Thank you. But anyway, like, let me take these off. I don't need to read. Anyway, guys, I'm gone. Hope you enjoyed. We got kind of off topic talking about comics, and nominally this was about spooky season, talking about horror films, everything dealing with the fall season in general, and scary myths. We touched a little bit on scary myths, talking about the origins of Nightmare on Elm Street, and then we talked about some of our favorite horror films and slasher films, uh, which then led into like talking about comic books because there there are, for people who don't know, not all comic books are superheroes. Some there are horror comic books. Marvel, like I said, Marvel started off in its heyday making a lot of stuff about about um, doing horror stuff, uh, both like in the 30s and 40s, and then even later on in the 60s and 70s, they had a whole little thing dealing with like horror, and then they crossed their horror into the superhero stuff with Marvel Zombies twice, which was a success. So then DC made his own version with DC Zombies back in the 2010s. Um, then we just got off into talking about superhero stuff. But in any case, hope you guys enjoyed. I will. This won't be the last time I talk about spooky season. This is actually the second time so far. Um, I'll probably hit this topic again in a few weeks once it's October. We're gonna talk about this again, and I'll probably be showing you my McDonald's stuff once I get my new McBoo bucket. And it's rumored there's gonna be some new Halloween McNugget buddies. So if people remember in the 90s, there was these Halloween themed McNugget buddies. Those are supposed to be coming back in October. So we'll see. If so, I will be getting one and you'll see it. So in any case, more spooky season conversations to come. Thank you guys for the conversation though. And I think Carlton is gone, but when he comes back, I will ask him if he wants to join in to be a moderator. Oh, and it's, I guess I missed a few comments. Uh, oh, Melissa, see, but that's just playful, chaotic, not playful incel. um, just 60 seconds to think before you type incels or I switch to roast mode. Feel free to bring that troll into my channel. The Jumanji girl, yes, I'm sub to her YouTube. Mm. She was at MBK. Jumanji girl? Mm. He said I was chicken stuff. And Miss Moon pinched me hard as F. Asian style, black and blue style. My wife pinches me, but not in a bad way. Like she told me, like when we're walking around, sometimes she would just pinch me because she was just saying to make it like that I'm real, that she can pinch me that I'm real. I guess I don't know if that's a Filipina thing or not. I have to ask her once I get off if that was a Filipina thing or if that's just a her thing. Mullen says, I hate people that hate a comic book character for no real reason. He's, but you gotta remember, Mullen, this guy's a hotep, so he's not a rational person anyway. He thinks he is, and he's not. He's just a failed rapper who's now a music teacher, and he always thinks he can. He tries to be he tries to be didactic, but he's so often wrong on the stuff that he talks about. And it's like I don't get how he tries to be so didactic and then he tries to educate me on things. I'm like, dude, you only have a degree in English literature. Like the only thing you should be educating me on is Robespierre not being the person who wrote Shakespeare or something. Like don't try to lecture me on history because you're not equipped for it. You have no credentials in history. You have no credentials in politics. And you don't even have any background in comic books because you don't read them. So I just don't take him seriously at whatsoever. Most hoteps shouldn't be taken seriously, if any. But yeah, I don't think Carlton's here, so I'm a dipset. C. Michael says I love Night of the Living Dead, the 1990 movie. Yeah, that was the sequel. Return. No, wait. Yeah, it was Return. I think it was called Return of the Living Dead. Then there was a third one that came out also in the 1990s. Because they're all on Tubi, by the way. Tubi has a great selection of classic horror films. If you guys want to check it out, they even got the old stuff. That's why I was watching Creature from the Black Lagoon last night because they got that classic stuff on there. Um, AMC if, has classic films like their streaming service, and Netflix has a bunch of international horror films. So I recommend them highly if you're tired of just seeing American horror films. Netflix has a good selection of international horror films, especially from Southeast Asia. One says I'm loving Streamlab throws cash up everything people get taken out. He said every time people get taken out, yeah, because the thing is when people even when people troll is generating traffic, so after a certain amount of traffic, Streamlab comes in and will put that into the chat room. So I tweaked it so it would do that, which is great. Hopefully it works. Carlton says I'm here. I'm listening. Oh, my bad. Carlton, did you want to be a mod before I go, man? He said I'll take a wrench to hit the trolls, man. Oh, you got it. Here we go. Boom. Thank. I appreciate it, brother. It actually would help me out a lot. Oh, he said she live streams, but I don't type. Okay. Scyther asks, "What's my name?" Just a Contrarian is what you can call me on here, or Contrarian, or J.A.C. Whatever you feel comfortable calling me. One says pinching. So Asian women, Jamaican, Latinos do it a lot to men. No, no, but, but no, I don't mean the bad pinching though. That's what I'm saying. Like when she pinches me, it's not when she's mad. Like it's like a love pinch. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how to explain it. Like I said, I don't know if that's just what my wife likes to do. She gives me love pinches, not like when she's mad or annoyed. She just pinches me out. Like it's like a love pinch. It's not hurtful. It's like just a little pinch because she's like happy. Like when we're doing stuff together, she'll just occasionally just give me a pinch. There's another thing Filipino women do, but I can't mention it on here. I've heard that almost all Asian women do this. So Moonlit, if you know what I'm talking about, you you can write it, but I'll have a way to say it here. But there's a thing that Filipino women, but I heard almost all Asian women tend to do with their men. Which guys, I'm pretty sure like this is one of those things. This is a bonus for dating Asian women, particularly Filipinas. Um, but I don't want to go there. I don't want to mention it here because you know, if you want to know, you can go to Filipina P's YouTube channel. She's she's a cutie, and she gives great content. She makes great content, very enjoyable. She caters to the guys who travel and to older men, usually of the middle years, even elderly years. Some people have, I mean, so much so that some people accuse her of just pandering to like middle age and old men. And maybe she is, but she's very successful at it, and she's not completely wrong in what she talks about. And she has talked about it several times on her channel, a certain thing that Filipino women do. Then she realized that it's not just Filipino women do it, it's like almost all East Asian women do it, particularly in Southeast Asia. So, Melissa's nice squad. Carlton, welcome. So I appreciate it. No, thank you, man. Seriously, I appreciate it. He's a oh, what is that? Is it what they do YouTube? He's a is what they do YouTube friendly. It's not you. It's not YouTube friendly. Like I said, if Moonlit knows what I'm talking about, he can put it in in the chat room. But I don't want to say, out of respect for my wife and other people I've dated. But Filipina P YouTube channel, shout out to her. Um, I've spoken to her in her comment section before. Filipina P, Filipina, second word Pea. She's talked about it. I'll just give a hint. Is they do it when you sleep. So if Moonlit knows what I'm talking about, he can put it out there. Other than that, I'm about to. I need to go get some Z's. So I still got uh some some homework I need to do for my my programming course tomorrow that I need to do. I'm not doing it tonight. I'm going to do it tomorrow, or well today, later today. And the later I stay up, the more hungry I get. I don't want to do that. So, but like I said, the hint is they do it while you sleep, and it's not a bad thing, by the way. Asian women can be some of the most affectionate women on the planet. Latinas too. I've heard that some Latinas do this as well, but I know it's heavily done by Filipinas, and then generally by Southeast Asian and East Asian women. Then I've also heard that some Latinas do it as well. But it should come as no surprise that the most feminine and affectionate women tend to do these things. Maybe on a different stream I'll mention it. This is why I should do my Patreon page. Well, I do have a Patreon, but I have not put any content on it. Maybe I could start putting some of that spicy stuff up on my Patreon. But I think Moonlit's about to start his live stream. So Moonlit, if you want to talk about it on your live stream, go right on ahead. Uh, yeah. So, but on that note, I'm out, guys. Take it easy. Go again. Check out Tubi if you want to see some like classic horror films. Go to Netflix if you want to check out some international horror films. Yes, also Pluto. Excuse me, Pluto TV has a lot of stuff on there as well for horror related content. And here on YouTube, actually, you can catch some YouTube. YouTube has YouTube movies. They have a lot of free movies that you can watch with ads. Now, if you don't want to watch it with ads, you can get YouTube Premium, or they have movies that you can rent or buy on YouTube as well. But they have a YouTube actually has a large library of films, believe it or not. But let me go before more of these neurodivergent trolls flood the, flood this flood the chat room. But welcome to the team, Carlton. Thank you. Because again, as you can see, I can I could always use the help even with Streamlabs assisting me. Because Streamlabs is assisted to catch some stuff, but I don't want to overload Streamlabs with too many prompts, because if I do, then it will start getting rid of stuff that I don't want it to get rid of, like the Filipino person earlier, Chan. I hope he returns. I don't know why. I don't know. It timed him out because he put everything in all caps, but he was literally just telling everyone to like, share, and subscribe to me. So Shout out to Chan if he ever comes back. Sorry that my AI moderator timed you out, my friend. Prince underscore Chan. That's hopefully he will return. If not, I understand. But yeah, I'm out, guys. Take it easy. Thank you.